It's been a whirlwind year for South Korea, a shocking scandal that led to a historic presidential impeachment, followed by a snap election to pick a leader that the people have faith will help regain trust by getting the job done at the top office in a transparent fashion. Much of the focus was on normalizing Seoul's domestic and international state affairs from then on. Here's Hwang Ho-jun with the first of our long year-end special series.
This is where it all began. Around a year ago, a series of mass candlelight protests took place here at Gwanghwamun Square. People cried out for change, calling for the resignation of the then President Park Geun-hye over corruption charges. And through the so-called candlelight revolution, which the international community called a model of peaceful exercise of democratic participation, came the birth of a new administration.
Park's presidency was terminated as the Constitutional Court upheld the parliament's impeachment vote in a unanimous decision. And 62 days later, the liberal leader was elected.
2017년 5월 10일 오늘 대한민국이 다시 시작합니다. 나라를 나라답게 만드는 대역사가 시작됩니다.
President Moon didn't have the luxury of a transition team and was sworn into office just hours after the election results were announced to face the overwhelming challenge and pressure of unifying a divided nation and normalizing state affairs. The Moon administration came up with 5 key policy goals: a government in the hands of the people, an economy that guarantees a better life for all, a country that takes care of its people, balanced development across regions, and a peaceful and prosperous Korean peninsula. Displaying his intention to be a people-centered president, he pushed for a supplementary budget worth about $9.8 billion to create quality jobs and improve job market conditions.
그러나 그보다 더 주목해 주시기를 바라는 것은 일자리 추경의 절박성과 시급성입니다.
The president invited the families of the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster to the Blue House and offered his personal apologies to them on behalf of the government. He also invited leaders of the ruling and opposition parties to the Blue House in the spirit of bipartisanship and to seek cooperation among the government and the ruling and opposition parties. On a national level, the administration has pushed to root out corruption in the defense industry, as well as revamp the intelligence agency and the prosecution, both of which have long been accused of political bias. The Blue House also enforced strict moral codes when nominating new top officials. Any candidates who had dodged military service, evaded taxes, made speculative property trades, falsely reported their address, plagiarized their thesis, committed sex crimes, or held prior DUIs would be deemed unfit. For the first 100 days, President Moon's approval rating hovered around 80%, and it has been in the high 60s in recent weeks. There were, however, obstacles along the way. Even with the strict moral code, a handful of President Moon's nominees for high governmental positions failed to get Parliament's endorsement, resulting in President Moon completing his cabinet 195 days after the launch of his administration. Provocations from North Korea have put another damper on state affairs. Pyongyang has conducted a total of 11 missile launches and its largest nuclear test yet since President Moon entered office. The South Korean president condemned North Korea for its continuing threats, but also urged the regime to come to the table for dialogue. Seoul's pursuit of a peaceful resolution to the issue of North Korea was reflected through President Moon visiting 7 countries, hosting 3 state visits, and attending some 40 bilateral summit talks and several multilateral meetings during his short time as president.
그런 만큼 자칫 지나치게 긴장을 격화시키거나 우발적인 군사적 충돌로 평화가 파괴되는 일이 없도록 북핵 문제를 둘러싼 상황을 안정적으로 관리해 나가야 할 것입니다.
To realize the government's ultimate goal, a peaceful and prosperous peninsula, the president said a firm basis for bilateral and multilateral cooperation is necessary. So the Moon administration, while still putting great significance on its relations with the 4 key powers, the US, China, Japan, and Russia, has also sought to expand South Korea's diplomatic horizon, engaging with Eurasia and Southeast Asia through what President Moon calls the New Northern and New Southern policies. Coming back from his latest state visit to China, President Moon pledged to continue to practice a pragmatic and balanced diplomacy while prioritizing South Korea's national interest and its people.
Eventful. would be an understatement of what 2017 was like for the president and his administration. Going into the new year, President Moon will have to show that his efforts so far to bring together a divided nation and establish a peaceful and prosperous peninsula are not just temporary. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.